This is Eliezer Reese, and you're listening to Sunny Brands, a podcast where we explore the relationship between purpose, branding, and impact. On each episode, I interview the heroes behind the brands that make our world a better place. In this episode, I talk with Jelani Memory, founder and CEO at Kids Go. Jelani has been called the Mr. Rogers of our time, except that he's black. As a black father of 6, Jelani wanted to talk to his kids about race and racism, so he wrote a kid's book about racism. His book has now evolved into a powerful media company that's disrupting the publishing industry, creating brand new bold stories for kids across audio and video, and above all, empowering a generation of kids with diverse stories. Jelani reveals how passion, vulnerability, and good business sense can lead to true innovation, the kind of innovation that can create a brighter, more inclusive world.
Born and raised, Portland, Oregon, youngest of 4 kids, and I didn't know this as a kid, but now having some hindsight, life was really chaotic, really traumatic. Dad leaves by the time I'm 4, raised by a single mom, working as a nurse, working nights, so works 7 to 7 and then drives us to school and then, picks us up, and then it's sports, and all 4 of us all played 3 sports like year round. One, I'm not even sure how my mom did it, but, I faced abuse, neglect, you name it. And for me, I was both a really smart kid, but also a really curious kid. And there were no real safe adults for me to help navigate life with. So I did a lot of that on my own until I started to collect what I call these father figures. And one by one, I'd get to like 5 of these men in my life who were giving me thoughtful advice, feedback, love, care, attention, time. And now I probably have, I'd say probably 20.
Wow.
And it's like my Voltron of sort of, this thing, because in a lot of ways I wasn't parented.
Yeah.
And so now, today, as a father to 6, 4 stepkids, 2 biological kids, a lot of what I'm doing as a father is inventing. I'm both learning and pulling from those father figures, but I'm also going, there's no catch in the front yard with my dad that I can go back to.
Wow.
He never saw me play a single sport, never saw me play the guitar, hasn't even met all my kids. But I've tried to invent what I think the best version of a father could be, or at least keep innovating towards that. You can see I'm very product driven in that way.
Yep.
And I didn't think I'd spend my whole career here, but I've taken basically that whole creative lens that I've had since I was a kid and pointed it at problems that families and kids face. So for the first company, Circle, it was about that relationship with technology. How do we give kids the best without giving them all the downsides? And with the Kids Co., it's really about making the media and the stories that I wish I had when I was a kid, because I didn't have them. And what I find is I run into other millennial parents who go, oh, gosh, I wish I had this when I was a kid too. My parents never talked to me about this. And so it's cool to get to watch Gen Z and Gen Alpha grow up with these stories and see, I legitimately mean this, to see how much further ahead than we are as grown-ups on all of the conversations that really matter.
I mean, your library is enormous.
Yeah.
It feels like if this was a retail store, it would go into a library. I could go into the library and just what do I want to talk about today?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you have the numbers. How many titles, which symbolize a topic?
In the last 3.5 years, we've published over 120 titles between kids' books and board books, parenting books. Right now, today, we're on a clip of publishing about a book a week. And they're on everything from imagination, creativity, cancer, adventure, boredom. We did one on COVID-19, anti-Asian hate, racism, which was my book, design, emotions. They're really about being honest with kids, talking up to them instead of down to them. And offering them what we hope to be the most important stories that they ever hear.
Brands exist to solve a problem. If you don't have a problem to solve, you have a hobby. Half of the battle is understanding what problem you're solving. This can take a long time. It's very insightful to hear how Jelani answers the question, what's the problem? What's the problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah. I mean, the problem is us. It's not the kids. Like, our philosophy is kids are ready. And I've seen that proven to be 1,000 times over. So when it comes to us grown-ups, and we're really expansive about when we say grown-ups, that's teachers, that's parents, that's aunties, that's uncles, that's coaches, you name it. Any grown-up in a kid's life. Why is it when someone dies, we don't know what to say? Why is it when a kid gets hurt, we say, oh, it's going to be all right? Or why is it that we try and obfuscate or gloss over or move past or delay conversations? I think it's because we're afraid. We're afraid of saying the wrong thing and injuring our kid worse. We're afraid of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Sure.
Saying something too early and a kid loses their innocence. And then we're afraid that we might tell them something wrong and they might repeat it to someone else. And then now we're reduplicating the problem. And so for us, it's about choosing between the lesser of two evils.
Right.
I could screw my kid up, or I could just say nothing, and at least I didn't do any harm. And then we start to go, actually, maybe that's like the right idea. Maybe I'm like preserving some sense of self, and I'm not telling my kid about these harmful things that actually are just going to be more of a problem anyways. And the problem is, as kids are thinking about these things, they have questions about these things, they have thoughts about these things, and they have to do it all alone because they know that we are terrified of talking about them. So who else are they going to go to? Friends, right? Just imagine your average third grader, right? Like, their first talk about death is not with a safe grown-up. It's with their friend at school. It's like, that's not ideal.
Totally.
For all the reasons that's not ideal, right?
Right.
And so for us, our product steps into that gap and tries to create a bridge between the grown-up and the kid, not because the kid is gonna get broken if the wrong thing gets said. It's because literally parents are frozen in what to say. And when that book is read together, now they have a shared language how to talk about it. The parent goes, wow, my kid wasn't destroyed by reading this.
Right.
Now they have all these questions, and I realize this is actually good. We're moving in the right direction, and maybe I'm offering my kid something that I never got, which is really the big downside, is we don't have these conversations with our kids because our parents didn't have them with us. And so when we hit that stage of life, we are totally bereft of the tools to have the conversation.
Understanding the problem is half the solution, but the other half is actually a good solution. Brands often like to complicate what the solution is, and in the case of Kids Co., you'll see that the solution is right in front of you.
What I believe is the most magical storytelling vehicle ever created, and I really mean this, the children's book. Like, think about what the children's book represents. It represents story. It represents ideas. It represents brevity. It's not a 2-hour movie, right? It represents no screen time, right? So what's the last thing you want to do as you're putting your kid to bed?
Right.
Let's watch a 2-hour movie. It's not going to happen, right?
Totally.
And then it also does something really special that's actually kind of covert. Is it creates bonding time, special time, one-on-one time. So that means that kid and grown-up are often there together, reading together.
Right.
And a kid wants that to last as long as possible, especially if it's bedtime, right? And if it's meaningful, a parent will want it to last as long as possible too, for all the good reasons that it can.
Right.
And so we co-opt that vehicle that is the children's book, and we use it for a very specific purpose, which is to start a conversation on something often difficult or meaningful to talk about. And I have found it's a magical teaching tool. Grown-ups will tell me that they get tons from our books because the problem, like, we like to pretend like we read the big long books, but we don't. You know,
Right.
like you buy them or they sit on a shelf, but you just don't have the time.
The
right?
best I can do is Audible.
Yeah, exactly, right? But a children's book, everybody can read, and it's meant to talk to you like a child. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I mean that
Right.
in that it's being specific and it's being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, you cut through so much clutter.
Mm-hmm.
You cut through so much politics. You cut through all the stuff, and you get at something that's fundamental and that's true. And when you have that bridge between grown-ups and kids, it's just magical.
Mm-hmm.
It's really special. And I know even as I say these words, like I'm both preaching to myself and every other parent who will listen to this to go, God, I wish I had that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because it's all you ever wanted, right? It's
Totally.
like that connective tissue, that connective time with a safe grown-up where you're learning and growing and understanding better, and where they're conferring respect back to you as a kid.
Imagine you're about 6 years old and you can go into a library and pick whatever book you want about a topic that your parents don't really want to tell you about. That's what Kids Go has built.
I'll put something together with shoestring and duct tape. Like, I don't care. To me, it's about that creative output, that, shipping something, getting something out there in the world, getting that proof and that feedback back from real people. So 6 of the books we had written and designed and had copies sitting in a warehouse, okay? 6 of them.
Huh.
The other 6,
Okay.
we had authors attached, nothing written, and covers designed that weren't even going to be the final covers. We were just like, here is a cover. Now,
Pre-order.
on the website, they all look the same, right? And we needed to show where we were going, what we were trying to do as a brand, right? The stories that we were trying to traverse
Put
into.
some fire behind you to like.
So that you could just get it. And now, like, nobody can look at our collection. Like, I go meet with like 2nd graders, 3rd graders, 4th graders all the time. And I always end my session with, pitch me a book. I say, just tell me something that's important to you as a kid's book about.
That's your research.
And you think they'd be like, oh, a kid's book about ice cream and Minecraft and video games. No, it's like a kid's book about being patient. Or one kid was like, a kid's book about toxic relationships.
Wow.
This is like a 4th grader, right?
Wow.
So we launched the books, and grown-ups show up to buy them for their kids. And I think I hoped it would work, but you never know when you launch something.
Right.
And it worked. And our very small team of 3, again, more shoestring and duct tape just to get the engine going, marketing, write those books now that we've been selling so that we can start shipping them. You got to print them, you got to ship them. And then it was like, oh, let's off to the races. Let's go make some more books. Let's go tell some more stories. And we front loaded with a really innovative method in writing all of our books in a single day. That for me was both an efficiency thing, as well as nobody's around telling me I can't do this, right? Who says it's impossible? Nobody's in the room telling me that. And the other one was I wanted to be a part of the creative process. And so I created the most overglorified group project, known to man. It's like, let's write a book together, and created a safe ecosystem where that could happen. And now we've put, 100 plus authors through it, some celebrities and icons, some kids, some school teachers, parents, regular folks. And like a magic trick, it works every time. We write a 700 to 1,000 word manuscript that'll eventuate in a 64-page children's book on a tackling topic. Like we just did one on alopecia, we did one on public health, we're doing one on Juneteenth. And they're not bad books. They're incredible books because we bring in authentic storytellers to come bring their first person experience, true experts with life lived experience. And I don't know. It's in some ways it shouldn't work. Like on paper, none of this stuff should work.
One book a week?
We're publishing 1 book a week right now.
That should not work.
Yeah. I remember, so I played soccer in high school, and I remember there'd be like a point where you've practiced hard, like you were dog tired. And I remember our coach, Tony Betts, we'd be like at the end of practice, it'd be like 20 minutes left. This is a 2-hour practice. And he has just ran us to the ground. And he'd grab a bunch of cones. We'd be like, oh, no. And he'd pace around like we were practicing at this huge park. And he'd set them out and be like, all right, we're going to do 10 laps. It's like, oh, man. And then it's like, I'm one of the better runners on the team. So it's like, if I'm not out front, then it's like, it looks bad. If he knows I'm running slow. And you just find that extra gear. You find that extra energy. You find what you're really capable of and made of. And with my team, it's not about running them to the ground. It's about going like, hey, I know everybody outside of this room is going to say this is impossible. This is too much. Should we take longer? You know, who's given us the right to sort of do this? And I sort of go, well, why not? Like, let's try. Like, let's go for it. And now we're at such a pace where it blows people outside of the room. Like they just go, whoa. Whereas for us, it's just like, we're just doing business. We are doing what we do as a team, operating how we operate. And you also realize how quick those cycles can go, but how efficient you can be, how creative you can be. You know, I came up with a cover for a book yesterday and everybody's like, oh, that's awesome. And it wasn't sitting right with me. So I revisited it today and I just crushed it. Like I didn't have to revisit it, but that creative energy was just like,
sure, yeah.
I just needed to revisit it and I just like nailed it today. And the team was like, yes. And now I can't even like look at the other cover. Like the other cover's so bad in comparison to this next thing. And we treat a lot of the business that way, where it's not just show up, robot, do the job.
Right.
It's about the meaning and purpose of the work and the creative energy behind it.
So you mentioned that you like to be a part of the process. So
Yeah.
I just heard you do book covers.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
You jump in the strategy session. Have you been a part of every book writing session?
No.
Okay.
No, and that became really important for me to train other people for how to facilitate
scale.
a one-day writing thing. Not just scale, but diversity of thought and opinion.
Yeah.
I have now written enough words to know when something sounds like me.
Yeah.
And so I'll often tell authors, I'm going to draft a sentence. This is a Jelani sentence.
Yeah.
I go, I need you to make it yours. But I go, this feels like this has the import of your idea. And so now that we have multiple people who can facilitate a workshop, what's great is I know when I'm reading a Jen book. I know when I'm reading an Emma book. I know when I'm reading a Rick book because of the cadence and the sound, as well as the author layered on top of that.
And also for context, for everybody else listening, how big is the team?
There's 8 of us, 6 FTEs, 1 contractor, 1 consultant.
And you're putting out 1 book a week.
Yeah, on top of in development, well, actually producing 1 podcast, launching another one, developing 3 television shows, working on a new long-form book series, doing the children's books, obviously all the marketing, all the ops, all the shipping, working in the back end, a new platform for educators. So it's like, you know.
You're on fire.
I'm on fire. Yeah, it is both existential.
Totally.
It's survival, right? It's sort of like we are Tom Hanks stranded on the island.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's that sort of like, if we don't figure this out, you know, nobody's going to figure it out for us. But it is so much fun to do the work.
Totally.
And you get to see the impact.
Totally. Talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the motivating engine outside of your creative, like, I love and enjoy this. Yeah. I'm sure there's the stories that you're hearing and the people reaching out and emailing you and all that.
They feed into themselves, right? The creative energy is about the impact, and the impact fuels the creative energy. But there's not a school that I don't visit that a kid doesn't come up to me afterwards and share about something that connected with them from my talk. And I share everything I just shared with you, which is like, I grew up in a chaotic home, abuse, neglect, etc. I talk about the work that we do, the authors that we work with, the importance of, tackling diversity and inclusion through the stories that we tell, the fact that I believe that anybody can make a children's book. Like I genuinely believe that, which then makes it possible for every kid. Often I'm the first author they're ever interacting with, which is like wild to me, right? Because I was like the kid who like couldn't read when I was their age. And I'll have kids coming up to me. You know, one fifth grader came up to me after a school visit, and she said, "My dad abused my mom when she was pregnant with me, and physically abused me for 8 years. But now we don't see him anymore, and we've moved on. I think you should write a kid's book about abuse." That was she was pitching me. She was giving me advice. A fifth grader, okay? In those moments, you realize we're not ahead of the game. Even our company, we're catching up. We're catching up to where they're at, right? And we will do a disservice to our kids if we don't confer to them the respect they deserve, that they've been through some stuff. And I don't care how rich your kid is, how good a school they are, how smart they are, what school they're going to. It doesn't matter. Every kid is going through something. They all just went through a pandemic. You know, my story is not unique. Right. And you add on, you know, divorce, death, cancer, fear, loneliness, depression, anxiety, you know, getting bullied at school. Pile all that stuff on and go, I don't know, is any kid okay? Right? Because we can't just pretend like they're fine.
Right.
For us as adults, we have autonomy and control, and we can manage our lives around those things. And also we can choose who we want to be and we don't want to be around. Kids don't get that. And so oftentimes, not only are they going through this stuff, they have no control, and they're going through it alone because all the adults in their life are sort of like, just go play video games. Like, get out of my hair, I'm busy. I gotta make dinner, or I'm tired, I want to go to sleep. And I'm not immune to that as a parent, by the way. Like, it's right. You know, it's just like an instinct. It's like, everybody be quiet, and also I want to sleep. You know what I mean? But offering kids respect does so much. And that's part of what we're trying to do with our work.
Man, super inspiring. We have a friendship outside of this, and I asked you, I don't know, 9 months ago, a year ago. Once you told me everything how much stuff y'all were doing, I asked you, so how's work-life balance? I was expecting, like, nah, that doesn't happen. And your answer was like, I work a regular job, like a regular amount of hours. And my jaw dropped. I'm like, how can you even fit all of that? Being a parent of 6, while running the company at the speed and the kind of quality that y'all are putting out, I mean, it's insane. What will you, like, I don't know if you get this, but maybe when people are like, man, I'm busy, like, I can't. Like, what would be, like, a lot of the folks that might be listening to this would be like, they're trying to start something, they're passionate about it, but they're like, I'm doing this site thing, and maybe I'm doing this other site thing, and I'm trying things out. Yeah. What kind of pointers will you give them for, like, starting something and sticking to it?
Yeah, well, precursor to that, I probably don't even work 40 hours a week. Like, that's for real. Like I was playing my new PS5 for like an hour earlier today. Like, that's just...
I can't.
Like, I probably don't even work 40 hours a week. And I say that not to be like, oh, I'm so productive, I can just do whatever I want. I don't mean that. What I mean is, most of the time when we say we are working, or what looks like work, is not actually work. It is delay tactics. It is busy work that seems like work that's not real work because we're afraid of doing the real work. I advise a lot of entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs will do everything but make a thing and ship it to customers for fear of just what customers actually think. They will do all the things. Oh, I'm going to make a pitch deck, and then I'll have somebody review the pitch deck so that the pitch deck's good, so I can talk to investors, and investors are going to give me money, and then I'm going to pay myself, and then I'm going to get an office, and then we're going to start working on the thing, and then we're going to spend a year, maybe 2 years, because we want to make sure it's perfect, and then we're going to work with a team to launch it. And it's like all of a sudden I was like, whoa. Is your idea good? It's like, if you believe it's good, make a version of it. I don't care if that's a minimum viable product or a sketch on a napkin or whatever. Like, make something and show it to somebody.
Yeah.
And if you can't get someone to go, whenever you make that, I will give you a check, even if that's a $10 check or a $10,000 check, then you go, maybe you don't have what you think you have. And and that's okay. Get on to the next idea.
Yeah.
Do the next
Test.
thing.
Try things, yeah.
And so I'm all like, shipping is everything. I don't care what you're working on. Make a thing and put it in front of somebody.
Yeah.
That's the real proof. Because then even your friends will be like, oh, that's nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they'll go, oh my God, that's incredible. Right? And so part of why we're shipping books so quickly is we have such a discipline in going, perfection is the enemy of getting something into someone's hand. And getting that real proof positive. And not everything's going to be a winner. You know, not everything's going to knock it out of the park.
And that doesn't mean that perfection or excellence is not a part of your values.
Yeah, but you practice your way into that.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, I don't know, is a song that takes a year to write better than one that then takes 10 minutes to write?
Sometimes not.
Sometimes not, right?
Yeah, right.
What are the factors and ingredients? And I go, it's so cosmic and chaotic that it's hard to really tell. But I'll tell you what, a song that somebody wanted to write that they never wrote, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that song is. It's not a song.
Right.
Right? And so what's funny is we run into so many people who their dream is that they wanted to write a book. Their dream. And they'll have that dream for a year, 10 years, 20 years. One woman we just worked with, 40 years, she's had that dream. She's never made anything. She's never tried to do that dream. Now, there are all these obstacles in the way, but I just don't even want to hear it from somebody who's like, oh yeah, I am a designer, I design things, and I am wanting to design things. Then design things. I don't know, like, do the thing and put it out there and let the work speak for itself. And that, like, there's just a refining process there. And I like, it's what I find myself having to say to entrepreneurs more often than not is, you have put actually a bunch of roadblocks in the way of just shipping a thing because you want to basically say you did it the right way.
Right.
As a protection to go, it's not my fault if people don't like it. I did it the right way.
Right.
And I go, no, it's just as much your fault, but get over the failure of it and move on to the next idea or refine that idea and make it better and better.
Right.
There's still books in our collection that I almost like can't look at because I don't like them. That I designed, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's also this, like, some of them are our best-selling books. And so I sort of go, what gives me the monopoly?
The ones that you don't like are the best-selling books.
Yeah, what gives me the monopoly on deciding what's good, what's bad, and what's not?
Totally.
Like, in a very weird way, like the market actually decides. You know, make a painting and hang it up on a wall and let people look at it. And the further those people get from having a connection to you, the more brutally honest they will be. And there's a truth in that is undeniable. And I think for the creative process, for the entrepreneur, it is about shipping things. It's about getting things into customers' hands. I'm not saying rush. I'm not saying do a bad job. But don't make all the 20 excuses before you make the thing. I remember agonizing over what we should call the company. And one of the clear principles I wanted up front was like, the books operate on this magical principle that they are what they say they are. A kid's book about design is a kid's book about design.
Right.
They are synonymous with each other. So I go, what are we? It's like, I don't know. But I was like, people know the books and they're already calling us sort of a kid's book about. So it's like, we'll just be that. It doesn't roll off the tongue. It's a little weird. But eventually, like, once you got familiar with the series and us, we just made sense. And then we internally talk about AKBA. That was like sort of our sort of shortened version of it. When things really exploded in 2020, you know, we ended up selling almost 100,000 books in 5 days. It was wild. Sold out of every book we had in the warehouse, you know, went on back order 2 times over. We just raced just to fulfill and keep customers happy all that summer. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, actually, I want to go faster. I want to tell more stories. And books aren't my specialty. I cut my teeth taking photos, doing podcasts, making films. And so I was like, I want to do that stuff. And I had a vision for what that could be. And so I thought, you know, this is really about taking us from a book company to a media company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you call that?
Yep.
Right? How do you brand that? And we brought on this really wonderful agency. I really, appreciated and respected the work that they had done. But ultimately, I think it was a mistake, and not a mistake because their work's bad or because they did a bad job. It was because I was being so singular about what we wanted and needed that I needed to let myself do that work. Sometimes it's your own worst enemy, but sometimes if you're gonna be that, if you can't avoid being that, then you need to let yourself be that. So we went through that process, and eventually, where they got to and I got to is like, I need to do some of this work with you. Because I'm now like there's friction here,
right?
And this brand, this company, the things that we're making, they're so tied to my identity,
right,
that I have to be in the loop on that. And I go, for better or for worse, I can't avoid that thing with the things that I make. I've got to be making some of the brush strokes. And so we landed at a kids company because we were going to do all these verticals, which we ended up building, right? A kid's class about, a kid's book about, a kid's podcast about. And they were going to be these various media verticals that were going to say what they were. Now you can imagine there's some wisdom in that, but there's a downside to it, which is like it can become a little constraining.
Right.
So we wanted to do this series for board books. And we wanted to call it A Little Book About. Now all of a sudden you're breaking the model.
Right, because you're creating subsections within those verticals.
But you're breaking it for the right reason, but you've made the model to be a comprehensible way to think about it.
Right.
And so even after we finished it and we launched it, it was like, I just knew it was wrong. But it was like, we've made this decision, now we are this thing. And part of why it's wrong is, every interview I did for an entire year solid was like, this is Jelani from a kid's company about books, or the kids book company that's about, it's just nobody could say it because it was so jumbled.
Yeah.
And it was actually our investors and our board that eventually we just started to call ourselves like AKC, a kids company.
Okay.
Kids Co.
Okay.
And that became the internal nomenclature. And then I was like, screw it. I was like, we spent this money, we DBA'd, we did all this stuff.
Live and learn.
But I was like, our URL, it was the right thing. It was the right idea. It was this, $11.99 URL, Kids Co.
Okay.
We should just be that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be like a kids company, and doesn't need to have the about or all the derivatives. It can actually just be really simple that a Kids Co. makes a kids book about, we make a little book about, we have these podcasts, this really wonderful network, we're working on television shows, and that will be opportunistic about how we use it, but things will always be called what they are. Be specific in that way so that there's a clarity to the brand, and we will always be topically driven. And so that's what we are today, and we're pretty disciplined about that. We're both disciplined in the mess of it, meaning like being willing to scuttle hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work to just go, this is just the right answer.
Sure.
The sunk cost, who cares? Like, this is just the right answer. And we reduced down to this mark that is so simple so as to be, like the copyright office was like, this is not a mark. You place a letter inside of a shape. And yet, my friend Jamie Mustard, I'm sure he'd be really proud of me, is this whole sort of theory around why ideas and songs and brands stick around for us. And that they do it when they're primal, when they're so simple and so basic. And what we ultimately created was like those blocks that kids play with, the little like blocks with the letters around it. We've just simulated that in the simplest form, right? It's like this cube shape, this primal shape, with the first letter of the alphabet that every kid learns just placed inside of it.
Beautiful.
No color, no adornment.
Brilliant.
And it just sort of works. And even if it's like not technically ownable, which we're trying to own it, you better believe we're trying to own it. It's so dangerously simple that nobody wants to follow us down that path.
Right.
Right? Because it's that, like the book series. I remember our law firm was like, you can't really copyright a book title. And I was like, yeah, but I was like, but it'll be a brand. And he's like, okay. And he had it was like a lot of skepticism. And I go, no. I go, even if somebody wants to copy us and doing a kid's book about, I go, good luck. All that brand equity, it's just going to confer to us.
Yep.
And it was a gamble because anybody still could just go make like
Yeah.
a kid's book about it if they want to.
And you can't tell them
it's a book title.
not to.
I can't tell them not to. There's some little bit of rules around it, but I go, please,
Yeah.
please give us a ton of brand equity
Yeah.
by you spending your dollars and your time and your attention and your energy. And ultimately, we have traversed such a dangerous path and threaded that needle that we've landed in this place where we have people telling us what our roadmap is years in advance without us saying a single word because it's so obvious where it should go, right? And that's when a brand works, it tells its own story without you needing to tell it for you. And I can't meet with a classroom of second graders without them suggesting things that either we have already done or will do because the brand must do those things.
Right.
It's so clear, it's so focused. And like, I don't know, if I were to ask you like, what must P&G do? You'd be like, I'm not even sure I know what they do today. They do a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Whereas if it's what must Nike do or what must Apple do, there's a clarity of that. There's a focus in that.
Right.
And even though they do a lot of things, the brand is so tight and so focused and so disciplined. And so that's one thing that I am maniacal about and holding us accountable to. And you'll just find me often in Slack or in Google Meet is just going like, we don't do that. That's not us.
Let's talk about rebrands. I found that the easiest way to understand the elements necessary to have a brand is to compare it to the necessities a person has in order to communicate. A person has values, a way to speak, a personality, a vibe, if you will. If brands are like people, then a rebrand is like a midlife crisis, a crisis that came about through a change of heart, maybe a change of interest. The rebrand process is an opportunity to redefine who you are, what you stand for, and where you want to go. A few reasons to consider a rebrand may be a change of the business model, conflicting priorities, a new vision, or maybe a negative image, to name a few. In the case of a Kids Co., they launched in 2019, and just a year later, Jelani decided that a rebrand was necessary. While many factors played into this decision, the company's struggle to keep up with demand was the moment that invigorated Jelani to expand the brand's offerings.
We worked with this really wonderful firm, and I just kept going, I just can't tell you how much I don't want to do that. And it wasn't because it was bad work. I was just like, it's not us. And I don't know how to convey this language of going like, I don't want to be like a kid brand. Kid brands are notoriously awful.
Right.
Notoriously, right? They're just really bad. And what they wanted to build was a kid brand. And I go, I'm trying to avoid that in all the ways that I can because no kid is ever visiting this website.
Right.
Only grown-ups are visiting this website.
Gotcha.
We are making a product that's for kids, but even then, a grown-up is buying it and kids are opting into it. And the one thing I want our product to say is that we are respecting you, kid. We are not talking down to you, which is just in the visual language of it. They just look like they're not for kids. But it says kids on the front, it says kids books. So you kind of have to go, I get, my brain is sort of like hurts a little bit. In the same way, like iPads are not for kids. This is this piece of glass. Like what adults said we should hand children pieces of glass, but kids love them. And that's about good design and good branding and all those good things. So
oftentimes when people think about branding, they think about the look and feel. And it is that, but it's also much more than that. Remember the brand as a person analogy? A person needs much more than a pair of jeans, boots, and a hat to communicate that they are a farmer. You feel me? The branding process includes much more than just appearance. So, what were the visual decisions that Jelani and his team made in order to communicate who they are?
When we were building the brand, I was creating like whole page mock-ups. The chunky type, I just kept going like chunkier, just like bigger. I was like, no. I need the whole word to do everything. And then it was like, nope, don't want that many colors, just white. And then give me just like laser beam, just bright colors. That we're never going to try and mix together. They're always going to be separate. And again, sort of getting back to that sort of like primary colors, yellow, blue, red,
which is
green.
in tone with the mark and all of that.
Exactly. So this thing that you actually have a really modular, interchangeable system that also feels really disciplined. And since we are a words company,
Right.
the type and the typography is going to be really important. Now, I say all this going, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, but I either have good taste or at least I have really specific taste. And the very first book that I made, so I made a book for my kids. This was never supposed to be a company, titled it A Kid's Book About Racism. My kids fell in love with it, and they gave me the idea to start a company. It wasn't until I brought on my good friend Jonathan Simcoe, because I was like, this is the spirit of the thing. But I was like, I've literally like just grabbed a font online. I've used Gotham because that's like cool font to use. Why not? But I'm like, I'm sure it's pirated. And I was like, make this cover what it should be. It's heading in the right direction. Just make it what it should be. And I remember the first time I saw like how chunky the type was and how tight everything was, I was like, oh. And it took me a while to like really embrace it, but once I got it, I was like, yes, this, and I was just like, spread it to everything, right? And so that Galano Grotesque heavy that shows up on the book covers is like, any context we can use that in, we just hammer that home. And what's amazing is we kind of just like own it. Like anytime that shows up and there's a bright color or a child nearby, it's like, where's the kids go, right? It's like they must be somewhere nearby because it's so definable to us.
So good. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
And where can people find more about the product and the things that you're working on?
Just at kidsco.com. You want to see me get into trouble on Instagram, I'm at Jelani Memory. And yeah.
Man, thanks for your time. Appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Same.
Hey, thanks for watching. At Notion is a B Corp and award-winning branding agency. We help responsible brands launch. If you're curious about how we can help you, you can check out our website, atnotion.com, and see for yourself. Thanks.